Week 9 is in the books, and y'all already know what that means. It's time for the Week 10 waiver wire. You're with your hosts, Justin Henry and Prabhat Parmar. And I see you got that sticker on, P. You voted today, huh?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, man. We gotta do what we gotta do. You gotta participate. We gotta vote. I casted my vote, as you can see by the sticker. And I ain't gonna let you guys know who exactly I voted for, but we gotta get it. It is what it is.
Hey, it is what it is. That's how a lot of fantasy managers are feeling right now, heading into Week 10. And listen, you may have had, a major injury last week. We know the trade deadline is today. For fantasy teams, this is the midpoint as well. So today is a very interesting episode because we have some names on our list today that may or may not shock you. But first of all, let's get to it. One of the bigger things that came out of this Week 9 was that Dak got hurt. And we know this is a catastrophic thing for the Dallas Cowboys offense that's been pretty mediocre. But when you lose your starting quarterback, Dak Prescott, for an extended period of time, things are going to look different in Dallas. So with Dak, obviously today, Jerry Jones came out and said there's a possibility that Dak Prescott's going to end up on IR. And it seems like that's the thing, probably out for the next 4 weeks. P, you got any glimmer of hope for anybody that had Dak Prescott and maybe need a quarterback?
I got a little hope for you guys, man. And this name may seem familiar from way back in 2022. This dude, Cooper Rush, is available in virtually everywhere right now. Let me preface this, right? Although I like Cooper Rush in real football, fantasy purposes, maybe a little slim, but specifically in super flex leagues, because in your single quarterback leagues, you could probably find somebody out there. But super flex leagues, if you guys play in those leagues, if you know, it's thin. But I'm gonna tell you like this: 2022 average 12, average around 12, 13, 14 fantasy points per game. But this guy as a starter really did help. The Cowboys out 22-8 as a starter. And if you guys remember, when he was playing so good, with CD, with that offensive line, that there was a little controversy as to should Dak continue starting? Should they sign Cooper Rush? Woo-de-woo-woo. But I'm going to tell you like this. Pump those brakes, but in your super flex leagues, if he's out there, he can help you out specifically for those Dak owners as well as those having bye weeks coming up. So Cooper Rush, he's probably going to be out there for you guys.
He'll be out there. And, even in super flex leagues, which a lot of leagues are super flex now, so it's dire in those leagues. You're starting Joe Flacco and he's getting you 5 points. And the super flex spot, you might be looking for better options. Some people have Will Levis and Mason Rudolph, so you could turn your nose up at Cooper Rush, but that's a good point. In super flex leagues, sometimes you got to find the best available player. And for the next 4 weeks, this is a guy who's probably going to fit in as a desperation QB2 in super flex leagues, but has a better, like he has a better point floor than having to start a regular player in that floor. So I think with Cooper Rush, it's not an exciting name, not somebody I'm rushing to pick out by any means, but I think for those who need a quarterback, it's one of those, it's a deeper league pickup.
Yeah, one more quick point on Cooper Rush as well, right? Something to get excited about. His schedule is pretty easy coming up as well. So, he's a little stopgap. If Dak does go on IR for at least the next 4 weeks, he's at least going to help you get to double digit points in that super flex spot.
Yeah, well, we had a couple injuries come out of Week 9, but this was also the trade deadline. And the trade deadline brought us a lackluster amount of news. But there was one gold nugget, P, out of this that I think could have some fantasy relevance. And that was Mike Williams being traded from the New York Jets to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, you might look at me and be like, Mike Williams, he ain't been nothing, right? He's a has-been. He's coming off the ACL. He ran around rotten, and Aaron Rodgers blamed him. But this is a big-time move, in my opinion, for this Steelers franchise and potentially in fantasy. This doesn't have the same appeal as a DeAndre Hopkins to the Kansas City Chiefs. But this is a viable flex play now that he's on the Steelers. Russ has been known to throw the deep ball. And what this does is it gives him a chance to move George Pickens around the offense. But that big body receiver that they've been missing in the red zone, where they've been having to give Najee Harris 3 and 4 carries in the red zone, now they finally have a jump ball receiver who can go up and get it. He won't be the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 that he was with the Chargers, but he's not going to be this wide receiver 6, wide receiver 7 type play that he was in New York. So I think he's a player that I would want to roster. I wouldn't be super ambitious, spend all the fab, use a high waiver on. This is a player that I'd want to make sure just wasn't on waivers heading into tomorrow.
Yeah, and one thing I like about Mike Williams, specifically with Russ, one thing we know about Russ, two things we know about Russ: throws one of the prettiest deep balls still, right? Also is known to spread the rock around. So you give Russ one more target, albeit a big body guy, like Mike Williams, I think that bodes well for him. Not only Mike Williams' value, but I think this also is going to increase Russell Wilson's fantasy value as well.
Yeah, Russ should, if you didn't have Russ as a mid-tier QB2, he's at least there, probably has a little bit higher ceiling than that. I think this helps out George Pickens. This helps out this entire offense. And the Steelers are contending for a Super Bowl. This is big news, I think, more so in real football than even in fantasy. And in fantasy, I think his ceiling is probably capped at like a wide receiver 3, an inconsistent wide receiver 3 at that. But we will see some spike weeks from Mike Williams. We will see some dud weeks from Mike Williams. So think about Gabe Davis, but just maybe a little bit more elevated, I would say, than Gabe Davis in this offense because this team has needed him. A couple questions before we get into these other players. P, when we're looking at wide receivers and running backs in some deep leagues, I'm talking deep leagues, not the leagues that we're talking about right now. Are there any wide receivers or running backs that you kind of have on your radar? Like a couple weeks ago, we talked about Jalen Coker, and it ended up working out because this was a deeper league play. Is there anybody that you're looking at deep in your leagues?
Yeah, I got a deep league play for you. We're going to talk about one here in a second, but one of my deep league plays that I'm really excited about is actually somebody coming off of IR. Keaton Mitchell, right? Keep in mind, Keaton Mitchell, he's going to be playing the Robin to Derrick Henry's Batman in that backfield, but if you've liked what Hill has done to replace and to spell Derrick Henry, you're going to love Keaton Mitchell. He's just like him, can catch the rock. He's electric. He's fast. That's somebody who I did want to spend a little bit more time on, but good thing you brought that up. Keaton Mitchell's out there. He's coming off IR, and he's going to be pretty impactful.
That's a deep league gem from Prabhat there.
Deep.
And one player I want to talk about just to make sure that he's not out there, just chilling on your waivers, Trey Benson. So, and this is not as deep as that, but we're seeing Trey Benson get a little bit more involved. And as this Arizona Cardinals team continues down their path, there could be a window that opens up here for Trey Benson the same way that everybody's excited about Jonathan Brooks. If Trey Benson gets a starting opportunity as well, there's some reason for optimism. And what about A.J. Brown, right? Obviously, A.J. Brown got hurt. He could potentially miss this game. It sounds like it's nothing serious. But is there anybody that could replace A.J. Brown here? Obviously, this would be kind of worst-case scenario. Him and CeeDee Lamb have potential to miss this week. Anybody replacement-wise for A.J. Brown that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think A.J. Brown's going to miss time. They got a divisional game coming up. It looked a lot more scary than what it actually was, his injury I'm talking about. They're coming back saying he's day-to-day. They're coming back saying that he's going to be fine, which are all good signs. I own a lot of A.J. Brown. But this is actually not it's not a bad segue to talk about the next wide receiver.
Before you get into that, I do have a really good A.J. Brown placement. If things get dire this weekend and he's not available, it's not on the Eagles, but he's a player that we're not going to talk about today that we've talked about multiple times this year that should not be on waivers. And that's Juwan Jennings. If Juwan Jennings is available in your league, make sure to pick him up. He was hurt before the bye, and then after the bye now, he is practicing and expected to be able to be available this weekend. Brandon Ayuk is still not on this team, and I think a lot of people think Pearsall is the wide receiver too. It is Juwan Jennings. So just make sure he's not available if he's floating around in your leagues right now. But you want to jump the gun, P. You want to jump the gun. Somebody who's ready to talk about it. Sound like you want to just take the mic. So go on ahead, bro.
Hey, you know me, man. You know me when I got the mic, man. I do what I do best. But and before I get into the next dude, you talked about him a little bit. Ricky Pearsall, not a bad shout either. But the dude I want to spend a little bit of time on, Nick Westbrook-Akeem, right? This dude here is flying under radars. And, a lot of Nick, what's so funny, bro? Nah, Nick
Man,
Westbrook and
the
Key,
pause getting
listen.
crazy.
Listen, I'm going to tell you like this, bro. If I would have told you this dude had 4 straight touchdowns on this offense, you'd have been like, huh? Who's this guy? But no, look, with D-Hop getting traded, he's only, his value, his usage is only going up. This guy's flying on the radars right now. He had 2 straight double-digit games since the trade of D-Hop. And like I mentioned, 4 straight games with a touchdown. So one of the things I like most about this is obviously the majority of the coverage when it comes to the passing game is going to Calvin Ridley. They're floating everything to Calvin Ridley. The main cornerback's always covering Calvin Ridley. And this leaves a lot of the times him wide open and oftentimes in the end zone. So one of the, that's obviously huge for him now playing 90% of the snaps. But one other thing, after this next week versus the Chargers, this is probably one of the most cakest schedules for a wide receiver are the Titans, right? So fire up your Ridleys, fire up your Westbrook Akeens. So, this guy is good. Only owned in 1%, only rostered in 1% of leagues right now. If we're talking deep leagues, this is your boy right here.
Well, and I like this play, and this is somebody I picked up sneakily. I have a league that's like 12 teams, but it's best ball format, so like it just sets the lineup for you. And last week I was like, this is the player that I thought we were getting out of Tyler Boyd. Once the D-Hop deal was done, I was assuming Tyler Boyd would be next in line for targets and opportunities, and we haven't really seen that. And the one thing you talked about, you said he played 90% of the snaps. After the bye, he wasn't doing that. And then since this deal, the last 2 games, he's been playing now over 90% when he was closer to 20 to 40%. So lets you know he's going to be on the field. The big question mark for me with Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is this a Will Levis-led offense or is this a Mason Rudolph-led offense? Because I think that does determine how good of a player he's going to be, especially you mentioned the fantasy-friendly schedule. That is the determination in my opinion. But for now, if the touchdowns keep coming, I think Westbrook-Ikhine belongs on rosters at least. I don't want to say starting lineups, but he belongs on rosters to see if this is legit or not. He has more touchdowns than some of our favorite wide receivers, Tyreek Hill. You feel me?
But wow.
But speaking of players, man, that have kind of taken it up a notch, man. Coming back from injury himself, Quinton Johnson. Now, we had some Ladd McConkey questions last time, and I feel like Quinton Johnson has firmly slipped under the radar. He was already playing well before the bye, and then after the bye, he got nicked up and missed a couple games. And now all of a sudden, his rostership is well under 40% now. And Jim Harbaugh talked about a role for Quinton Johnson, getting QJ some looks. And I think everybody's enamored with what Ladd McConkey has done in his blow-up game last week. We saw what Quinton Johnson is capable of in week 9, 118 yards and a touchdown. So will he be a consistent wide receiver 3 for your team? No, but if you're needing receivers, you're looking at quite possibly the best wide receiver in the 2023 class. Even though we did see JSN go crazy last year. We saw JSN go crazy yesterday too. But this is a crazy tweet. But at the end of the day, P, I think this is one of those situations where this is a player you don't want to leave. Like, because of the offense, you're thinking, Chargers offense, they run the football. Herbert's looked a lot better over the last few weeks. I wouldn't leave Quinton Johnson on waivers.
Oh, yeah, you said it. Herbert is honestly putting in a case for some MVP votes over here, which is how he's throwing the ball, how he's placing the ball. I'm not saying he's going to be MVP. We still got Lamar, but it's hard to argue with what he's done. They're having to change the offense to go from a run-first team to actually a pass-first team, and not a lot of people know that. They're now since like the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've been really pass-heavy. And one of the things I like about Quinton Johnson is on that Chargers team specifically, you want to grab some equity, right? If you got a QB who's performing the way he is, there's really a little uncertainty as to who the number 1 wide receiver is. And if you have one of them like Quinton Johnson, who does have draft capital, does have a prototypical X wide receiver frame. It's not a bad shout, even though your boy Lad McConkey was styling last week or the week before last.
Hey, he's been styling over the last few weeks. But the good thing about Herbert is that, like we talked about, he's finally getting healthy. He's had 4 straight games now over 200 yards, and those yards got to go somewhere. It can't all be Lad. It can't all be Quinton Johnson. So both of those Chargers receivers should be good here. At least if we're getting, it seems like we are getting that old Herbert. So good to see there for these Chargers wide receivers. Couple questions came in the chat before we get to our next two. One of them's talking about Hunter Henry and what's his valuation. Obviously, Drake May was able to give it a go this week after the concussion. He's been playing really well as a starter for this team. A lot of concern about the Patriots overall when Jacoby Brissett was starting, but some new doors are opening with Hunter Henry. And we've seen Hunter Henry be good at times and bad at times, but it seemed to get a little bit more consistent. I got him on the tight end 2 radar, and I don't really feel like there's a lot of room for him to break into the tight end 1 spectrum, but I think if I had to start him in a 12-team league, I probably want better, but I'd be all right with it. Are you on the same page?
No, I'm not on the same page. I think just with the tight end market as it is now, it's very fluid, right? Like you have a few mainstays in there who are finally starting to show out. But the back half of that, like that TE2, if you want to, or TE1, if you want to call it, right? From your 6 or 7 on to 12 or whatever, I think he's very much in play. And he may not be the most consistent, but when he has boom weeks, he has boom weeks. So, I'm not too down on Hunter Henry. I think he could very well be in the mix for anywhere from TE8 to TE12.
Yeah, I think to me, it's a little, I see it like with the receptions over the last couple of weeks. I ain't been there, but I ain't mad at you either. Week 15 to 17 will be all Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert. Listen, Herbert was traded today from the Bears to the Bengals after we got the announcement that Zach Moss will be out for the remainder of the season. He is headed to IR. Khalil Herbert, we've heard the name before. He's had a 1,000-yard season. He's been an RB2, RB3 type play in the past. Any upside or hope for him backing up Chase Brown right now for the Bengals?
No. I think they have what they have. They like what they see. They drafted Chase Brown to eventually bloom into the player that he is now, right? But they trade a 7th for Khalil Herbert. Yeah. I think his role is going to be like the second half of his last name, Lil. So just to, you know what I'm saying? Khalil. But I don't know. I don't think his role is gonna warrant him being rosterable.
Yeah, it's tough because I think it's not a 1-to-1 replacement for Zach Moss, who was good in his role, right? Obviously, touchdown or bust type play. But I don't think Khalil Herbert really even has that much upside. We saw Chase Brown take over 80% of the snaps last week. So I'd assume it drops somewhere between 70% because I don't think they want Chase Brown taking 85, 80% of the snaps here moving forward. Marvin Harrison Jr., what's his perceived trade value in redraft? He had a really bad performance. And I think one of the bigger things here is the disappointment that people had because they drafted him too early, right? He was going as a back-end first-round, high-end second-round pick in most PPR leagues. And it's a tough pill to swallow because we see the upside, we see the nature of the 20-point games, but then we come to realize, like, he's still a rookie. He's still going to have matchups that is a struggle for him. And I think it gets to a point where you get a little frustrated if you've had Marvin this whole year. I would say this, the perceived value for Marvin and most of the young players is still always going to be a lot higher in the marketplace than you realize. And I think if I could get back-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 value for Marvin Harrison, I'll be ready to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I agree. You guys should really tap into us, follow what we do on social media because we've been preaching that, right? He's being overdrafted in the second round. He's not like, your Justin Jeffersons, your Jamar Chase. He's not going to be that. But you said it best. And, his perceived value is what it is. So I think part of that question, it's a long question, but part of it was talking about dropping him for Nuke. I wouldn't drop. He's not somebody I would drop, right? No. He's somebody I would definitely trade. Everybody's trade deadlines are coming up, so I'd put some trades out there. I would drop somebody else for Nuke, who is D-Hop. I'd drop somebody else to pick up D-Hop for sure if he's out there. But yeah, put him in some inboxes. You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised what you get.
Well, I see Travis here saying he just needs targets, but this, like, I think that's the realization when it comes to fantasy is that sometimes we have to take our emotions out of it and realize what this is. This isn't the air raid offense. This isn't under Cliff Kingsbury. This is a different offense under Jonathan Gannon, and they are comfortable with making Trey McBride their primary target in this offense. So I think, yes, he needs targets, and that'll come and develop as he grows into himself as a player. But when you have a Pro Bowl tight end, potential Pro Bowl tight end here in Trey McBride, it looks like he's well on his way to being that. You got to force feed him the rock as well. So with due time, and it wouldn't, me and P have talked about this on, you know what I'm saying? We've had other shows about this. In due time, it may happen. And it could be, we're talking about wide receiver 1, Marvin Harrison during the fantasy playoffs. But for now, until he gets to that point, we got to treat him at the value he is. I would trade Marvin Harrison. And if you do, make sure you get full value. Last one before we get into our last two players. Are you dropping Tua for Justin Herbert? Is that how high you are on Herbert?
Oh, that's tough, right? That's a good one. Am I dropping Tua for Herbert? One thing I don't like about Tua, and we talked about this on our personal channels and social media as well, it does in cold weather, Tua does perform differently, right? And one thing that they do have now that they haven't had in the past is a really good rushing attack. They're running a lot in the red zone. Tyreek is not really, they don't really need Tyreek to be Tyreek. Am I dropping Tua for Herbert? It's something I'd consider if you have to. And why not? I think they're kind of like 1A to 1B. Man.
Yeah, they're similar,
it's a lateral
mid-tier to high-end QB2 range. Like, we know they have the ceiling of a QB1 on any week-to-week basis, but most weeks they're going to fill in as quarterback too. So I like Herbert, and I think that he's a good player. I would rather have Tua just for the name value, because if there is a Tyreek type week here very soon, or there's a 5-touchdown Tua-day, you're not getting that kind of value this entire season out of Justin Herbert. I hate to say that, but I'd probably be looking to move him if I had him. All right, P. Obviously, we talked about a few names here. There was a couple other standouts from this weekend that belong on rosters. One at the tight end position. Who you got at tight end that you're thinking we should pick up this week?
Yo, this guy at tight end, Mike Gesicki. Listen, if you're talking about multiple people on that Bengals team that can gritty, we got to talk about Gesicki, and that's a bar. But listen, I'm gonna tell you like this: the week before last, right? Everybody thought he was just out performing just because it's National Tight End Day. He doubles down this most recent week, 5 for 6, 102 tugs. For people who are struggling with tight end, which a lot of people are, as of late they've been showing out, but this guy should not be on waivers. Only 15% rostered. They're using this guy even when T does come back. It's my favorite part about this guy. He got the swag, bro. The way how far he puts those arms back is crazy to me. But I'm gonna tell you like this, dude. Listen, he's got character. He's got swag. One thing the Bengals have not had in recent years is a dependable tight end. This guy can go and get it. And, although he may take a slight downtick when T. Higgins gets back, one thing about T we know is his hammies are always bothering him. We're not sure when he's going to get back, but he should be rostered. Definitely. He actually, my opponent actually started him, put up 30 points on me in a TE premium league and wiped the floor of me. So
that's why
Mike Gesicki.
It hurts you to the core. That's why you talking about Gesicki, man. But listen, I think Gesicki, man, he's a good player. The one thing I would say is this is probably contingent on if T. Higgins is available for this Thursday game. So they're on a short week, play Baltimore on Thursday. So make sure you're checking to see if T. Higgins is going to be available, because if he is, I think that downgrades Gesicki. The one thing I would say about him is that he doesn't play a whole lot. He played 30% of the snaps. So I would say just be careful with the tight end position. Obviously, if you're desperate, this is the time to do it. All right, and then our last one that we have for today, as a pickup that we've talked about, and obviously dead wrong about it at the time, Demarcus Robinson. This was a player we were like, yo, especially me, I know I was hyped for this. When Puka went out, when Cooper Kupp went out, I was like, this is the prime opportunity for Demarcus Robinson, and he faltered in that role. Come to find out, now he decided he wanted to play that like the Demarcus Robinson we was hyping up. In this role, he is much better suited as the wide receiver 3 and sometimes the wide receiver 2 in this offense, depending on who's available at the time. But we saw Demarcus Robinson have himself a very nice game against the Seahawks. And this grab, look at his grab in overtime. Why was he? You were doing that the whole time Puka and Cooper Kupp were out. And now you want to go and shine and hit game-winning one-handed catches. Demarcus Robinson.
To win the game.
To win the game, my man. The thing is, it's easy for him now that there's other coverage on these two prolific receivers. Last year down the stretch, we saw him have multiple double-digit performances, and it looks like he's right back on track with that as the wide receiver 3. Good enough to beat bad matchups, not quite good enough to have good coverage on him. So I think for now, he's a decent flex option for those in your deeper leagues. Demarcus Robinson, man, a name we were hyping up before, had to come down on, but now you can get him for free.
Get him for the low ski right now. Yeah, I love how I mean, you said it best, right? With coverage on Kupp, with coverage on Puka, he's dominating the middle. These linebackers, safeties on him, these third corners are on him. Yeah, he's gonna be eaten. So good shout out to that.
Even that deep ball, man, that's crazy. All right, we're gonna get a couple last questions here. Cedric Tillman and Ferguson, trade question here. Cedric Tillman and Ferguson for Dowdle and Otten. And I like this question here because Cedric Tillman's on a bye right now. And this is a player that, obviously with Winston, he's looked a lot better on the field. You got Jake Ferguson, who now does not have Dak. Obviously, you're trying to lean into the fact that, like, Rico Dowdle might be used a little bit more. Cade Otten has been playing at a high level, but Mike will be back. There's no Dak. Talk to me, P. We doing this deal or not?
I'm doing that deal. Listen, I mean, look, Cade Otton's making a name for himself right now. Even though Mike's going to come back, we still don't, they're still down Godwin as well. So we've seen an uptick in Otton's production with both of them. We've seen a voice to say, let's get Otten the ball. Otten is now a mainstay and has this chemistry with Baker. So I'm really high on Otten. Tillman, I'm also high on Tillman as well, but then you got Dowdle and you got Ferguson, right? With Dak out, that's going to hurt Ferguson more. It's going to hurt Dowdle. I like Tillman. His the rest of the season schedule is tough. That's something you want to keep an eye on. They still have him as like wide receiver 3 value just with the amount of targets he's getting. But yeah, give me Dowdle and Otten.
Yeah, I'm on that Dowdle and Cade Otten side. Obviously, Cade Otten has been balling. Only thing is, when Mike comes back, might be a little different. And for those wondering, we talk about Cedric Tillman. He's kind of in that wide receiver 3 flex tier. He's not quite up there with like your DeAndre Hopkins or even like a guy like DJ Moore. He's still a little bit further down. Those two are more like wide receiver 2-ish. They've earned that, that title. So I think for now, we got to keep Tillman a little bit below your DeAndre Hopkins, your DJ Moore type players. Mm-hmm. What does it mean for Kareem Hunt if Pacheco gets back? This is a really good question because Pacheco, it looks like he's on the mend, expected to be back here, at least on the practice field within the next week or two. And obviously for fantasy, we've known that he's been a high-end RB2. And we know Kareem Hunt has performed at that exact same level here in the time that he's been on the field. And I think this is one of the worst-case scenarios you can have for both players because they're both going to be splitting reps. And you got Kareem Hunt will have some time where he looks good. You have Pacheco some time where he looks like the better back. And I think we're going to see this platoon of 2 backs. Think, Zach Moss and Chase Brown earlier in the year. Just a committee. And what you don't want in the fantasy playoffs is a committee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for me, I'm kind of out on that.
Yeah, if you can trade Hunt at any point in time now, he may not, Pacheco may not have a full role, but get Hunt off your roster. Trade him for what he's worth. He just had a pretty good game in overtime.
You got about a week or 2 left. And I think the thing with Hunt is it's kind of like Chuba Hubbard. At some point the cliff is going to fall. But it's like if you don't really have trade partners or your league doesn't trade, just ride it till the wheels fall off. Mm-hmm. And then the last trade question we got, Nick Chubb and Wan'Dale Robinson for Pickens and McCaffrey. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding, Deshaun? If you don't hit accept on this deal,
Deshaun, bro, right you should have hit accept 10 minutes ago, bro.
Leave the stream.
Accept 10 minutes ago.
The stream. Go to your league. Hit accept. Go to the group chat and throw a bunch of smiling emojis, laughing emojis, hurt emojis to the other dude. Whatever you got to do, man. But listen,
just hope that don't get vetoed.
That is going to get vetoed. But you know what's not going to get vetoed? These pickups. Week 10 fantasy football pickups here from the waiver wire. We got Cooper Rush for your super flex leagues, Mike Williams, Nick Westbrook Akeem, Quinton Johnson, Mike Gesicki, and Demarcus Robinson. Good luck to all you guys on your week 10 waivers. We will see you guys on the next one. For Justin and Prabat, we out.
Go out.